Aloha mai kako. Thanks for joining us after lunch. We'll try and keep this lively. We have our panelists up here for our final panel called, at first it was called Alternative Futures. And it's a name, I guess, I created during our design team. It was just trying to get us to think outside of the box. And then while going through the process, getting some help, I was coming to the term of like ʻOkoʻa. How do we stand away from what is the norm and get us to think of a direction that we want to see? And I think there's a lot of things that we talked about during these 2 days that really stir up a lot of thoughts and ideas. But we're really looking at, I guess, the concept of this, it's a little abstract, is alternative futures in cultural resource management and heritage management in Hawaii and also the Pacific. We really look at it, we saw these three big things. You know, what are the core challenges that we're trying to overcome? What are solutions of those challenges? And I think we've put up beautiful white Post-its on the side over there. So we're really trying to invoke some, you know, what are the solutions that we can come up to? And to take it even further than that is, what is that call to action that we can have today? Is it one call to action? Is it a few calls to actions individually and as a collective? Some of the desired outcomes we were discussing as developing this panel and kind of lively it up is, how do we decolonize and deconstruct the current state? Take the stuff that's good, throw away the stuff that's not good. What is that leadership development that ignites that community action? I think we've heard from people that are and have done this for many, many years. And what is that? And we're also thinking about what are those actions and activism solutions that will see those changes. And finally is like, what's that future? Not only locally, but globally, throughout the Pacific. We want to see what is that future that we want to see. This is just kind of a reminder of, as we round up this think tank, the initial outcomes that we got from the pre-surveys. We talked about best management practices, creating those working groups, doing the inventory of what people are doing, initiatives, resources, training workshops, and so on, and code of conduct, which is what we just heard from before lunch, and then a research agenda. How do we manage that data? So today we have a distinguished panel up here. I'm gonna introduce them through their bios. I think only one person gave me their bios, so it's whatever I could find via things on the internet or people you gave me. But and then we have one alternate. Instead of the daughter, we have the father. But first, let's introduce them all, and we'll get into the Ignite panel. First is Des Kahotea, belongs to the Tauranga Iwi, Ngāti Pukena, and Nai Terangi. He completed his MA in archaeology in 1983 at Auckland University, which was followed by a 2-year internship with the Smithsonian Institute, which included 9 months at the Bishop Museum in 1985. He came back to Tauranga in late 1980s and became involved with the Iwi Treaty of Waitangi, confiscated land claims until 2001. With the introduction of the RMA, the Resource Management Act in 1991, he became involved professionally with both the RMA and Historic Places Act as a consult archaeologist and Maori heritage specialist. He undertook PhD studies at Waikato University in the topic of historical anthropology, followed by a postdoc research related to Maori heritage. Give a hand for Des. Kamanaʻopono Crabbe is the CEO or kapohana of the Office of Hawaiian Affairs since 2012. His priorities include restoring ʻOha's integrity in the Native Hawaiian community. He is also focused on nurturing a sense of commitment to empowering Hawaiians and strengthening Hawaii. He was selected from ʻOha's executive team, where he had previously served as a research director, so he's been with ʻOha since about 2009. And before that, he was the director of psychology training at the Waianae Coast Comprehensive Health Center, and he earned his doctorate in clinical psychology from the University of Hawaii at Manoa. Mahalo Kamanaʻo for being here. Sitting next to him is Kawika Burgess. Kawika Burgess grew up in Mauna Lua, riding the waves of Sandy Beach. Kawika has held a number of positions related to the stewardship of Aina and resources, including Chief Operating Officer at the Office of Hawaiian Affairs, as a Land Assets and Operations Manager at Kamehameha Schools, and as Program Coordinator for the Trust for Public Lands, Native Lands Program. Most recently, he held the position of CEO for the Hawaiian Islands Land Trust. Currently, he is the CEO and General Manager of Kalona Brand, an agribusiness venture on the North Shore of Oahu. Kalona Brand seeks to regenerate agriculture in Hawaii by developing sustainable farm practices and farm operations and food systems. Kawika attended the University of Hawaii at Hilo and received a bachelor's in geography and a certificate in Hawaiian language. He later attended the University of Hawaii at Manoa, taking graduate courses in urban and regional planning. Mahalo, Kawika, for being here. And we have, on this side, we have Neil Ho'okele Hannes, the founder and CEO of Ho'okele Strategies, LLC, a consulting enterprise to support the reemergence and growth of value-driven leadership and enterprise that forge a thriving environment, robust economy, and social equity. From 2000 to 2015, Neil directed the Land Assets Division of Kamehameha Schools and was responsible for a portfolio of 358,000 acres of ag and conservation lands in Hawaii. He also co-founded the First Nations Futures Program and Hawaii Investment Ready Program. The work of this division earned the Innovation and Outstanding Leadership Awards of the Hawaii Conservation Alliance, Historic Hawaii Foundation, I'ulu I Ke Kumu recognition from UH's Hawaii Nui Akea School of Hawaiian Knowledge, Kalaniana Ole Scholarship, honor of the Prince Kuhio Hawaiian Civic Club. Neil is a graduate of Kamehameha Schools, class of 69, received a BA and MA from Sanford University. He is active in community affairs, serving on numerous boards, including PBS, the Hawaiian Islands Land Trust, Aloha Kua Mo'oaina, Ulu, and Sultan Ventures. Neil is also appointed to numerous advisory councils and has been is currently a member of the State of Hawaii Commission on Water Resource Management. Thanks for being here, Neil. And Kehaulani Kōchola Abad is actually trying to get here, but in her stead, we have Uncle Fred Kōchola. I have a bio for Kēhau, but I'll read it. Kēhau grew up with her ohana caring for wahikupuna, and it was a regular activity. Later, watching early rounds of the H3 and Honokohua battles from the sidelines, she was inspired to seek an archaeology degree to become a qualified, she puts it in quotes, voice to counter other voices that so grossly lacked Hawaiian insights and respect for credible Hawaiian sources. Nearly 30 years later, and after engaging in struggles involving Halava, Mokapu, Honokoa, Hokuli'a, Walmart, Ward Villages, Naue, Rail, and most recently Mauna Kea. She is convinced convinced more than ever that larger systemic Hawaiian empowerment is key to achieving changes to better protect the Wahi Kupuna. And we have Uncle Fred Kachola here, who is from Kohala, and we'll hear a little bit more about him later. Mahalo, Uncle, for stepping in. So first in our Ignite talk, we have Des.
Oh, hiki huki tarau, hiki huki te uiraki, rei ahi. Papa, te whatitiri ki i runga kōrero. Pāpaki kauana nātai, ke hela moa. E whakanukutuku hea, whakaneke hea. Ki te tai ao, ki te ao maorama, te he mai ora. Rei koutou nā hoa o te tepu, tēnā koutou, e rauranga tira mai, tēnā koutou. So I better get down to action. About early 90s, I sort of, with a RMA come in. RMA is about market-led ideology, and with the RMA, the previous Town and Country Planning Act was it was very hard to, it was pretty prescribed in terms of zoning and what you can do with land, but the RMA opened it up so that you can, if you can apply for a resource consent and you go through the process, so for development, all sorts of activity, you'll get it. While previously the Town and Country, in the Town and Country, there was no acknowledgement of Māori heritage. You had the Historic Places Act in 1975, which introduced archaeological provisions, but there's no, in the 1980, the archaeologists put in traditional sites, but nothing really happened with that. And then with the RMA, you had acknowledgement of Māori values, which came from treaty claims and a high court case, and then Wāhi Tapu, which Rick here represents his mother, who was a major promoter of that. But so when I was about 93, involved in destroying heritage, that's what archaeology does, I thought about, I was up in the hills, and residential development, as you know, is going to wipe landscape. So all these wahi noho, where ancestors lived, and I thought, well, what's going to be here in 100 years' time when the mokopuna look around? And then so I decided, I changed my direction to being really proactive in management, heritage management, protecting what we have. And then so here's, just a couple of months ago, this kura, it's totally Māori, and there's, if you know Imai Kalaheke, his mokopunas here at this kura. He come over, he said he wanted to come and live with me, so he's there. And then I've taken up to this pā, and outside, before they come up to the top here, I said, leave all your bags, leave everything outside. And the whole thing is starting to, for they understand respecting places. And then I started talking, and it's about seeing what you see. You know, all maunga and all the other pā sites, just like what our tupuna here was talking. It's the same, connecting up. So in this particular area is Papamoa, so it's my name, Kahotea. My tupuna name comes from this area, called Kahotea, Tātara, Te Reimana, Kua Hau, Ko Tes, or Te Whataru. And then so in the background, so let's say about 86, I did this Western Bay Planning urban study, and I had to do a report, sort of a planning one, regarding issues that impact on the Māori community. And what's happened in Tauranga, a missionary placed himself right in the middle in the 1830s, and then the military come in after, and then there was our ancestors decided, let's have a fight, fought, land was confiscated, and then you had a military settlement turning out to, it's a very popular place these days. So as over time, all these marae hapu communities have been buried by urbanisation, land loss, all the thing that goes with it. So in 92, I did this Tauranga urban growth and so residential zoning over land. And then then I did a coastal. So all this process, and I'll go back to my thesis. I did my thesis so I can research on my own. It's building up knowledge about where we come from. And that's really, so all these reports, I'm building up knowledge. I'm going to archives, getting material, and putting it out there. And everybody here understands that process. And then, so I did a coastal reserves. I walked the whole coast, and I was lining up all these, what I had. And then I bumped into an uncle, and he says, oh, and then he talked about a wahitapu here, and somebody else talked about a wahitapu there. Then I work out there. So gradually building up my knowledge about the place. And then I was involved in an environment court for another hapu on my side, and basically I got burnt out, but we won, and Joe Williams was the lawyer. And then, so I was in Wellington, and then I heard one of the Department of Conservation archaeologists say, because there was an authority to destroy 26 archaeological sites in the Papamoa, and that's where my name comes from. And I say, and you sort of, oh, there's plenty of midden sites. That's why they say midden sites. So I had to think about it. I saw the application from the developer. I saw an uncle. He said he stood on this place and he saw nothing because everything's down towards this place, the Tumu, for flax gathering and fighting. That happened in the 1830s. So I went and approached a lawyer and then did an appeal. And do an appeal, I had to do an affidavit to say my uncle didn't know anything. And but that, so I had no problem doing that because of my name, Kahotea. And then, so then I heard that the consultant archaeologists were waiting. So as soon as the Historic Places Trust gave the authority, they faxed it, and then straight away, as soon as we received the fax, the bulldozers and earthwork grocers started working. So I had to rush through this affidavit, and I had a cousin deliver to the work site, and they closed the site down. So I had to rush back. And lucky it was summer. I had to rush back, and I had to do my homework. I got an environment court appeal. What I was looking at is the cultural context. I wasn't worried about the archaeology. And then just as it happened, then a cousin sort of come through, and he gave me this book, and it was my tupuna Kahotea's book he wrote in the 1880s, and it had history and genealogies. And then so I went through it, and I sort of wandered around all the different places in Pa, which is on the hills, and they're working out, trying to work out a strategy about how I can manage this. But the thing, because of the affidavit against, I had to do against this uncle, all the other uncles backed him up. And I got a hiding, I got burnt. And then the thing I learned, when I did work for another hapu, I had the green light, and whatever I did, everybody supported. But this one here, the uncle sort of thought, oh, we'll teach this young bugger a lesson. No, I'm just joking. But I managed to mitigate, and then I thought, because the thing up to that time, and that's why I said burnt out, it was like putting out fires. You're reacting to council, you're reacting to developers. So I said, that's not a good way to look. So I say, let's jump over the fence, get ahead of them. So I thought, so in Papamoa, with this thing, they just, because I was involved, I did a Tauranga urban study, so I knew the planning process, and then I thought, so there's residential areas, that's what I was dealing with, the 26 sites, there's a lot more sites, and then, and then there was other areas. So then in 96, I went and lobbied the Historic Places Trust and Tauranga Council, put some money up. What consultant archaeologists were doing, and one particular was there, he had absolutely no qualification. And then I was challenging that. His work was sloppy, and I critiqued it. And then all the crap started coming at me because, how protective archaeologists. And then, so the whole objective was is that we surveyed the area, because before it was identified to destroy. I wanted to say, let's put it out there, say to the developer, and they're doing everything by computer. That they can. We did it by GPS, the first GPS survey, and then you take those locations and then put in your plan and avoid sites. So that was trying to do. But it fell down because Historic Places Trust archaeologists wouldn't go with that. But that's okay. And then I had other involvements with Kailua Road, because this became a focus for development. And then Kailua Road and Ngā Pōtiki Treaty Waitangi. So all these sort of processes were building up information knowledge. And so this is, so within the archaeological, you understand lots of maps. The oranges are the tūmarae, the blues are the urupa, the burial grounds, and that area is their coastal zone. So in 1986, there was only 31 recorded sites. And then this is a recent Google Earth done it, so you can see all the orange, they all what they said, they shell-midden sites, but those shell-midden sites, a lot of them were the size of this hall. And to me, they're kainga. And the other thing, so when they did the assessment for the 26 sites, they had the Department of Conservation and Historic Places Trust guys, archaeologists come from Wellington, and they just said, oh, they're just shellfish processing sites to the pā. The white circles are pā in the hills. And then with me from there, you live by the fridge. You know, people were living there. They weren't living up the hills. Yeah, there was another phase. But when you can see that all those sites have been destroyed, so there's over 100. And then, so in this process, I had to focus on the culture. So I did all the layers, which are values. So they all different ancestors, different waka, different times that come into the area, right up to 1864 with the confiscation. And then so what I was doing with that, I line up all the places, all the waitapu, everything that's related to each layer. And then do a landscape thing. Which are the significant landscapes? You know, where are they located? And things like that. And then I say that we had 3 whales. One of them being quarried for infrastructure in the 50s and 60s. Hikurangi was taken for a water tower for Mount Borough Council. And Kopukairoa, there's a number of issues there. So those, and Tahuna, that's our estuary, and we call it the Tahuna, means the sandbanks. And then, so the first thing I did is a wahitapu area. And then, well, not the first thing, a number of different processes. So I used archaeology, but here, an uncle told me in 1992, they used to go down the coast, go to Kaituna River to go ealing for about 2 or 3 weeks, and he was told that there's a wahitapu, it's a battle site. And then, so I was able to, it took about Historic Places Trust 3 years, but that was registered as a wahitapu. So it included archaeological context. And the black are the pā. And then as part of it, I did an environmental plan, and it was about inventory. It wasn't about policy, it was inventory. And then, so, you know, just circles around there, significant landscapes, and then I bulk it up with what called it, or what's the traditions involved with it. And then produce this sort of map. I did it for another contract, but I did the wider Tauranga area, and what it does is the significant waterways. So the yellow is the estuary, the blue are streams, the black is old tracks or other trails, the sort of the purple is significant hills, and then the orange are significant landscapes, and the one of the pā and the other are all the. And when I was looking at that time, I saw it as the most significant landscape in the country, archaeological, but I tried to compare it with others. I couldn't get the information. You know, so I can compare it with other similar landscapes people with, because here, Historic Places Trust hasn't done that, and even archaeologists haven't done that. And that's why I knew that this is in the top 10 in terms of archaeological landscapes. But as I say, on the coast, it's basically been destroyed. So I end up in the thing we achieved is where these pā, this, you can see on the coast, and pā like Heo, Gerald told me Tupaia of Cook sort of said he saw marae, and Cook saw defences. And then part of it is I got a contract to do that, and I used GPS, and then had all the pā names, and that came from a family. The names of the pā, up to that moment we didn't, I only knew about 3 or 4. And then because of how they numbered and that, worked out, and then so you can see that, just terraces, it is as complex as those from Aotearoa as Maunga Kea, but on a different scale. So I'll leave it as that. I'll run out of time, and that's te ako. Kia ora nā tātou.
Mahalo des. Next we have Kamanaʻopono Crabbe.
Ili na mai ke loka ia kakua pau e na hoa makamaka, e na kupa, e na oiwi i ukala ahiki i kaha kai, i ka pipi i ana kala i ka wana au, i kahikina, ka wahi o kane i ke au ki e ahiki ke kokoko na kala, i ka mole le hua makomahana, i ka wahi o kane i ke au halo. Ai ke la moko I ka ili la o papahana moku I laila. Ke aloha no, aloha mai, aloha no kākoa pauloha. I ka poe malehini, maka ina mamao, makahikina I komahana, ke aloha no aku ia ʻOkoʻa pau no ke ia one hanao ko mako kupuna. Ke aloha no. About 1 hour ago, read the spreadsheet on ʻOkoʻa about the mea nui of the panel. But actually, I was informed by Kekuewa during one of our AVA sessions a couple of weeks ago. I guess my question is, for me, what is my kuleana in terms of culture, resource management, heritage, and why are we all doing this, or like why am I doing this? From my background, why is this important? Is for me, it really is about our well-being, our identity, and our survival in our own homeland. I don't need to tell you, I would probably be preaching to the choir about all the reasons why, the Poʻe Haole came and the sequence of events or the domino effect over 200 years ago, what that has done to our people, our culture, our language, our wahipana, our wahikapu, sacred places, disempowerment of our political sovereignty, so on, imea. I think for me is, we have bright minds, great potential. It's just how do we harness it? So for me is how do we get beyond the decolonization? I think if we took a poll, probably 99.9%, we would agree as indigenous Kanaka or Tangata Whenua. And then not only amongst you as stakeholders in this area, but I think for me, when we talk about, what is a model, what is a path, what is a plan, at least for Mea Hawaii, is what is the path forward, is how do we do it on a massive level and that it is inclusive of our community and La Hui. We have, I think we are maturing as a people in terms of good knowledge. Is how do we bridge the gap in terms of infiltrating? Or my good friend from Lahaina, Keiaumoku, is how do we infect the government and assimilate them or immerse them into Mea Hawaii? And I think that begins with our own foundation, as we have shared. For me, we have to acknowledge and recognize that the decolonization process, especially for me as a practitioner in healing, in Ho'oponopono, we call that mo'ohihia. Mo'ohihia is all the various entanglements, issues, dynamics that came to the root of the cause. Sometimes we don't know even if that's the root. We're just doing the Band-Aid. So we want to get to the source of all of this. And we know that we had an intact people, great society. We wasn't talking about sustainability. Our kupuna lived it. And so if we understand that and how we bring how do we bring our past traditional ike in today's 21st century? I've used this, I guess, concept, but I think for me is about the function of what we do, and why we do it. I saw you have governance issues about confidentiality, protection of ike. I think is all very important, and the function of, what now? Okay, so for example. The traditional practice is umuhau pohaku. I have ahu in the back of my yard. Built it years ago when I had a mullet and black hair and a black beard. I was about 50 pounds heavier. But if you understand the architecture and foundation of the practice, umuhau is what we call Hawaiian dry stack masonry. If you ask many of the practitioners, you begin with a foundation of your pohaku kihi, laying of your cornerstones, choosing of the site, why over here, not over there, what is the function of the ahu, what is the function of a ku'ahu, what is the function of a heiau. All of that has to be taken into consideration. Within that, you lay niho stones, you have haka niho stones or other triangular stones that look like teeth, but they help to set your foundation and reflective of what do you believe. We believe in olelo, we believe in mo'omeheo, we believe in iwi kupuna, we believe in ho'omana, all of these spiritual connections. And we build that a lot of times to maintain our spiritual bonds or relationships, connections to our akua and to our ancestors. That helps to define a sense of identity of who we are. The belief, the actual belief for us, like Maori, is, it's a cyclical cycle in terms of, by acknowledging our past, the afterworld, they help guide us in today in the realm of the living. And we carry that ho'omana in terms of that spirituality or that worship in guiding us today. Why am I sharing this with you? Is because we don't have that in government. We don't have that in, other than this gathering right here is, So when we protest at Mauna Kea or other sites, in Maui, they have the whole issue of iwi kupuna and Maui lani. How do we articulate to, I don't want to say, point out other people, but we have to cross that bridge, and somehow we have to educate, inform others. This is our belief. You may not agree, but this is our belief, and let's work towards the middle in terms of how do we do it. We have other reasons, there's the UN DRIP, Declaration of Rights and Indigenous Peoples, there's policies. I would say we should embrace them. That's one of the things I saw in here, like how do we get around policy and procedures? In Ohara, it's kind of difficult, but sometimes let's embrace it. Okay, the example I always use is there's a fighting technique called kalopa. It's using someone's strike to you and parrying it or pale, and they're using the momentum to counteract. So to me, policy and procedures are tools of the game. If you know how to use those tools and their game, we can not necessarily use it against them, but use it to our advantage. In the practice of umuhaupohaku, the action is all about building. Not just building physically, the foundation of going up. You have the pohakokihi, the niho, the haka, then you build up till you get to a platform, the paipai ili, the smooth stones. When you get to that level of the paipai ili, you are able to put the offering on top to pule, to prayer, and ask for the mana from our kupuna and ancestors. My last point is one recommendation I would make is strong institutional leadership. You need individual leadership, but I think you need institutional. It's about time Hawaiian institutions step forward and we make the transition from Western models, regimens, models, concepts, to really embracing our own traditional cultural practices, beliefs, and values, and then putting that in policy as direction and goals for the institution. For us, I can just share real briefly, as of last week, our board finally, the first time really adopted a board governance model and framework. At the top is Lahui, is what is it that OHA is focused on in terms of our advocacy for the Lahui. It includes iwi kupuna, vai, aina, mo'omeheo, olelo Hawaii, wahi pana, and advocating for Native Hawaiian rights. That is what we believe in, that is our foundation, that is what we shall do. Now you take that policy and then how we integrate that or trickle that down into our actual programs remains to be seen, but that's a huge step forward for us as a organization. Mahalo nui.
Next we have Kawika Burgess.
Ai, Felina ke aloha I nā kiaʻi nā kupuna o kēia ʻāina o ka pālama nei me ke kula o Kamehameha I nā hulu kupuna me kākou kēia awakea I nā hoa hānau no Aotearoa mai me nā hoa aloha ʻāina apau mai Hawaii o Keawe a niʻihau ka helelani Felina ke aloha ia kākou apau. Actually, I would first just like to give a quick aloha and acknowledge our esteemed and wonderful kupuna that was honored yesterday. I wasn't able to be here in the morning, but I must acknowledge that Uncle Fred Kachola, Uncle Kepa Mali, Daviana McGregor, Luciano Minervi, and Hannah Springer have all played. I've had the privilege of working or learning from each of you, and you have all had a profound impact in my life personally and professionally. So what an esteemed group to be with this afternoon, and well, what honor to be here with you. So I guess one of the underlying questions and themes of the conference and this afternoon is, why is our cultural heritage and our resources important? And I'd just like to give a few touches on that. You guys cannot see, that's okay, you can see the picture. But but first of all, these are the repositories of our cultural mana, right? These are places where mana is transferred from place to kanaka, from kanaka to place, from kupuna to the next generation. These repositories are the strongholds of our culture and places where we can transmit that culture to the next generation. These are the places where we pass on the stories, the traditions, the practices, the wisdom of our ancestors. If not for these places, where would we be, and how can we transmit this knowledge? These are the places that provide for us spiritually, physically, emotionally, for our well-being. If not for these places, then how would we be? And these places contain over 1,000 years of traditional knowledge of Hawaiian adaptation, Hawaiian innovation, and sustainably living in abundance in these islands. To me, that alone is a worthy reason to protect and defend these places. The question I would like to pose, the photo Mahalo Kai Markel, is how do we shift from defense to offense? I think in all strategies, it's important to have a good defense, and a lot of what we talked about the last 2 days was maybe more defensive, just as figuratively speaking, defending and protecting our cultural sites and our iwi kupuna. One of the questions I would like to ask is, how do we shift from defense to offense? If the why is important enough, then we must, be proactive and in this effort. And so I'd just like to share 3 ideas around that. How can we protect more of our precious cultural resources? One way is through voluntary land conservation, and it's a concept, and it's in, I guess, a part of the work that I've been involved in for the last many years, and I've worked with many of you in this room around voluntary land conservation, the concept of land trusts, the concept of conservation easements. And I mention it here today because I believe there's tremendous opportunity to expand the work and these tools with the collective body that is here with us this afternoon, with each of your respective organizations and Kaliupa'akai in general. These tools can be a tremendous resource to achieve the goals and objectives of what we're talking about in proactively protecting the most significant natural and cultural resources in the Pai'aino Hawaii. Indeed, these tools have been used, and just a few examples from 2,700 acres East Molokai, including the Ulukukui o Lanikaula, to some of our, most precious taro lo'i in Kauai, planted since time immemorial in Waioli, and Kapoho and Kapo'okea in Waihe'e on Maui, 277 acres, including Kaheau o Kealaka'i Honua. Collectively, these tools and organizations have protected over 259,000 acres here in Hawaii, over 6% of our 4.1 million acres, and some of our most significant forests, our coastlines, our farms, our ranches, and our cultural resources. Again, many of you are familiar with and have worked at this, and we have Laura Ka'akua here with us this afternoon from the Hawaiian Islands Land Trust. If you don't know about these concepts, you can see Laura after. But for those who don't know, I would just encourage you to learn more about these tools because it provides financial benefits and incentives. It's win-win solutions to work with landowners, with consultants, with communities, with cultural practitioners to protect and restore wahi kupuna. Second concept I would like to talk about is civic engagement and representation. I think we're all familiar with this picture, Hui Aloha Aina. But what I would like to just touch on is I think, unfortunately, in my opinion, sometimes when we share our history and then we talk about political engagement, it seems to end here in 1898 when 98% of our kupuna indeed protested forever the annexation of these islands. But the story continued. They didn't give up and go home. They continued to engage. They continued to seek representation. They continued to seek the malama of our cultural resources, of our language, of our heritage. This is the territorial legislature in the early 1900s, with Kanaka seeking again to protect our interests, protecting Hawaiian language, instilling it in the territorial legislature, Kuhio ensuring that that was done. This is the Home Rule Party in 1908. Many of our kupuna of the Hui Aloha Aina later becoming the leaders of the Democratic Party, the Republican Party, and the Home Rule Party, indeed sending the revolutionary Robert Wilcox to Congress. This is that Democratic Party representation and Prince David Kawananakoa in San Francisco. My point is that, Alan Murakami mentioned it yesterday. He said we should insist on being heard by decision makers. And I would say that's a good point, but we should also be the decision makers. And those who hold our values should be the decision makers. And we should have the representation on the boards, on the commissions, and in the public offices. Another thought I had, giving examples. Here's a few examples, but I read the book Ruling Chiefs, right? We all read the book Ruling Chiefs. Ruling Chiefs, our kupuna, some of them were the warring parties, but other of them got really good at caring for our iwi kupuna, caring for our farms and families, whichever flag was waving, so to speak, if you know what I mean. And so that's my point. We got to ho'omau regardless of which flag is flying. The last idea I would just like to share is revisioning Hawaii's economic future, right? So I think we all acknowledge and know and understand that at times our two primary industries, tourism and military, can be at conflict with some of the things that we've been talking about this weekend or this week. And so the question is how can we create our own economic future? How can we create sustainable abundance? Sustainable agriculture, social enterprises. Got to have Uncle Neil up here with us this afternoon. But one of the things Neil instilled in me in looking at land use planning, looking at economics, is how do we align economics with our environmental, with our cultural, with our community, and our educational goals. I don't see any reason why we cannot change that dynamic, where instead of fighting against our industries and our economics and institutions, we're aligned. And so our economic prosperity results in environmental prosperity, results in cultural prosperity, results in community prosperity and economic prosperity. The example there again, for me now, working with Kelowna and looking at the history of Ma'iliku, Kahi, and Kelowna, those associated with our traditional land use practices and our moku and ahupua'a, but known till this day for abundance, for peace, and prosperity. And I think collectively, that's what we're working towards, right? Restoring that collective mana, restoring the abundance, the peace, and prosperity. And so just the ending of Apule, Kane Auloli Kahonua, E kane e lono na kua mahi ai, ho'ola I ka aina poho ka ai, aulu kupu kupu, aulu lau po'ole, au kanui o ka ai, au e kane a me lono. Mahalo.
Mahalo, Kawika. Next we have Neil.
Hello, my kako. It would have been so natural of me to follow Fred, since he hired me my first job here at Kamehameha School, so old time's sake. Aloha ke akua, aloha ina amakua, aloha ina kupuna e alakai mau kako I ka alapono. Aloha ina kupa, ina kamaina, me ina malihini, o nei aina nani kamahau. Aloha mai kako pa, kahia pau. Oh, wow. I got the call from Jason, and I'm a retired guy, just minding my own business now, not doing nothing. I said, you got to talk at this conference of all these cultural practitioners and so forth. I said, me? Get guys like Kamanaʻopono, get some other guys to talk. Far more qualified. He says, well, the role is to be the Ignite panel. What's this Ignite? Kind of to be disruptive. Oh, okay, so now you're talking our language. So I think we might have something to say, right, Fred? Do more for more. Fred, he was my mentor, my first guy here when you're working in a job, and he cursed me for life with, you gotta walk on the wild side, Neil, you gotta walk on the wild side. Oh. A lot of employers late after that really didn't like that. But I've made a thing out about this thing. No matter what I talk, it's kind of the same talk, same title. It's about finding our way. And it comes from being named Koho'okele and having a business now, Ho'okele Strategies, but it's not about being lost. It's about finding our way. You don't take any action, doesn't mean you're not going somewhere. There's a current of society that's taken us someplace. And that current operates very strong in the business sector. and in the fiduciary sector like this, in the education sector, in the land use sector, and so forth. So if you're not finding your way, you're going their way. And so I said, okay, I think we can have some mana'o on that we can share. You know, my background is in this business of land management, having this kuleana for Kamehameha all these years. And what we know for sure is dramatic change is going to come to this world, okay, without a doubt, no question. And I gave this talk, I kind of created this talk with my First Nations program and so forth, gave it, some of you probably heard it, it says, when did Hawaiians become Hawaiians? You know, we came from other places, right? Probably weren't Hawaiians when we got off the canoe. You know, we became Hawaiians when we adapted to this place, when we adopted practices that were needed here in this place. And those practices shaped a worldview that made us actually unique even from our cousins, even from other island nations, because it was based on here, yeah? But man, there's some changes coming forward. There's and it's not small kind changes. There's gonna be massive changes to this place, which gives us our identity. And so, as this natural world changes, it will inevitably disrupt our cultural practices. And if we don't have the benefit of our cultural practices, and we don't have the benefit of our cultural resources, then what happens? I was looking for one Mad Max kind of a thing of the future, and Solomon Enos was way ahead of me, bro. Whoa, you know, will our future ancestors resemble us? Will they resemble our kupuna? If there's no kalo, if we cannot grow kalo here, who are we? Are we still Hawaiian at that point? You know, I think these changes will be thinking about it, got to be thought about, and future generations are going to be faced with those adaptations. And I like what you said, Kawika, Kamanaʻopono. Build them in your yard. You know, create that work actively to create it here, because you can't expect that what we've always had there, outside of us, in the natural world, is always going to be there. And so we're going to have to take special actions to kind of create it. So what is it that makes us Hawaiian? That's the heavy lifting question, and I'm glad I don't have to do it. I'm going to ignite this, give you something to talk about. In your breakout sessions, what is it? And as the things that we have relied upon, that we think today make us Hawaiian, if they're somehow not available to us, what do? How do we cope? How do we adapt? And how do we become familiar and resemble that which we cherish? But before you start, I got some humble mana'o that maybe will frame your dialogue. This isn't our first brush with cataclysmic change. Okay? Been there, done that. Try to look at the 19th century and the depopulation and the effects, and 19 out of every 20 people dying because of disease, because of alienation, because of estrangement, because of exploitation. Yet we as a people, yet we as a culture endured. Consider the dramatic change of our landscape and the imposition, the removal of a circular, of a sustainable economy that provided for every single bit of our needs, to an exploitation, extraction economy that was about industrial scale monocropping and export, and that made us dependent upon others to provide for that which we needed for existence. You know, that happened to us, and along with it came different views of who we were as a people. My ohana comes from Kohala, you know, Freddie, you know, and was looking at the reports of the Kohala Seminary back to the mission in Boston. And this report came from Joseph Emerson, the same time my grandmother was in school at the seminary, Kohala Girls' School, that the attempt to reproduce in these primitive society of a Polynesian island, the vigorous thought and advanced culture, which are the outgrowth of centuries of civilization on the other side of the globe, can only end in failure and disappointment. That's what they thought of my grandmother. That's what they thought of our people. And yet they survived. And yet they somehow got through that kind of insidious profiling. So, it's time, that's limited our advancement for far too long. And it's time to shed the dead weight of that, wrong characterization so that we can let fly our potential. And I see people in this room who've done that. And we're so proud of you, and you're the role models that we need to show our children. So, I think there's three keys. I'll leave you with 3 keys that I think are really important for our cultural survival and well-being. First, we gotta mine the big data. And Kawika, I think you mentioned this. There's 1,000 years of data in our ole and mele and ka'au. And we're only scratching the surface, not only just to find it, but people like Kepa are helping us understand it. And what does it really say? And how does this shed light on on our lives today? How will this give us insights on how to cope with the changes and challenges that face us in the future? Might expanding this knowledge of this repository and our understanding of this repository deepen our taproot. It's all the difference between a koa tree, which has the deep root to uphold a massive canopy, and an albizia tree that topples under that weight with the slightest stress. We don't be like albizas. We have the database here to be koa trees. Mine the database. The second thing is, aloha, the hui Kanakaole saying one day when the volcano was going off, says, we gotta write, we gotta observe, we gotta see what's going on. It is our job to write the story and the chapters of our own experience. In 200 years, they're going to be looking at your mele and your ole and your ka'au. They're going to be looking at your reports, your electronic reproductions and videos and so forth, and all that, to shed light on the world that they're looking at in 200 years. No shirk our job. That's on us. And to not do our job puts our future heirs at risk of extinction. And Kawika, you alluded to this too. We think we're brilliant. Well, man, you gotta struggle. What is obvious to us is obtuse to somebody else. They don't get it. And so we gotta create tools to kind of help them understand. That'll change their outlook and the policies and the behaviors in this wider society. Just as there's guys who struggle because they're blinded by their self-interest to see the climate change elephant in the room, some of the things we're talking about the benefits of creating vai and abundance over the long term, rather than just short-term maximization of maybe a single one of those little currencies, and usually as money. That's foolish. But believe it or not, just saying it doesn't make it policy, doesn't make it understood. You got to come up with tools, and this is something we worked out in the Land Assets Division to do what Kawika was talking about. We win on all the counts. We doing the right thing and the best thing, also the lucrative thing, the thing that can give us a good job, and the basis for everything that we do in our world. So in summary, we got to mine the knowledge repository. 2, we got to pay attention and figure stuff out. I was like Kalei Nuhiva. She said, I never knew pay attention was 2 words. It was always pay attention, and figure stuff out. And be the keen observers and scientists and documenters of our time. And then we must persuade others to accept and embrace our position, to do the right thing. We can do this, guys. We can. Look what we did with long-distance voyaging. That wayfinding revival of that tradition and that knowledge is now inspiring people around the world of how important it is to take care of this planet. Look at what's been done with our fish ponds. And the restoration of the fish ponds is catalyzing improved management of complex ecosystems, because now we're understanding the relationship between things. It's not just my pond, your bay, your stream, your lo'i, and so it's all connected. And now we're getting to know that and inspiring sensible policies that really help build interdependent communities and are changing our palette again, in terms of what is ono and so forth and what is right. The evidence we've amassed that links thriving native forests and the revival of cultural practices that care for those forests and those resources to a healthy watershed, to making sure that we all have the water that we need to survive has precipitated in broad multicultural partnerships for reforestation and resource management. We've done all these things. We've proven that if we assert our culture, we practice our culture, we remember it, we restore it, we can bring society along with us to do the right thing. There's something else that's important too. As in the past, we're going to rely on the courage, the intellect, the perseverance of not just leadership for a moment, but intergenerational leadership. Like we've seen, and I've seen very closely in a family I'm very pili to, the Beamer family. Auntie Nona, she dared to, on this very campus, she dared to chant knowing that it meant certain expulsion. And then she dared to stand up when only hula noho was permitted. And then she dared to be on a commission to criticize Hawaiian homes for not doing their job well. And then she dared to challenge Kamehameha School's trustees when they were abusive and derelict in performing their duties for this trust. And then come her sons, Keola and Kopono, who mastered their craft, who inspired one among those with the Casamaros and so forth, who inspired Hawaiian cultural renaissance, and who created that bridge to other cultures, to other peoples, to get them to embrace our music, to embrace these stylings, to embrace this culture all around the world. And then comes Nona's grandson and Kapono's son, Kamana, who's writing our history from our perspective, who's forging global alliances around the value of circular economies, who's working with me and Kaleo and so forth, setting policies on the State Water Commission that restore the health of our streams and allow cultural practice to be revived, and who's providing his children and his university students all the tools they'll need to carry this work forward long after we all are gone. The Beamers are role models to me. I don't know if how close you are to, you agree, but we definitely need more Beamers in this world. So I want to close with, this is Hawaii Loa, not an accidental slide. This is Hawaii Loa, a canoe made from the gifts of others, that the practice of wayfinding voyaging could not be supported by our own forests, that was bereft of the trees that would create of sufficient age and stature to create a vessel like Hawaii Loa. And so we went somewhere else. And what that says is that it was a time of people who made the adaptation, wayfinders who made the adaptation because they needed to bring back our culture in some form or fashion, even if it was in a spruce log. They would not submit, or surrender, or they refused to surrender to the forces of extinction, and they kept our culture alive. I think there's going to be a lot more of that going on in our future. And we need some wayfinders. And I thought about raising this as a question. But because I'm the same age as Hannah and the other kupuna, Kepa, and you've honored today, I said, put it as a statement. You are the wayfinders we need. You need to do that job. Our future depends on you, and I trust you'll accept this challenge. Mahalo.
Mahalo, Neil. Next, we have Kēhau Abad here, just off the plane, and we want to welcome her to the stage.
Aloha no kākou. O Kēhau, o Ka'apaʻapaʻa, ka makani o kuʻaina kulaiwi, o pōkaʻi ke kai o kuʻua keiki, o la kona ke aliʻi o koʻu ʻaina noho I kia mau la. Aloha no kākou. Wahikupuna and what we do with them and how we learn from them and how we grow with them. It's such an important part of who we are as Kanaka. It's the interface between two things we hold more dear than anything. Our relationship with kupuna and our relationship with aina. And in Wahikupuna we have both. They are one. And when we pause for a moment to just consider that, it speaks to why we are all here and why this is something so important to us. I'm going to just share a little bit about kind of my own, real fast, kind of personal journey. And I feel like so much of what the struggles were that I've been in, and I think a lot of you guys kind of know, my basic story is person trying to work with archaeological credentials to kind of ku'e what has gone on within the archaeological world. And I kind of always felt like whatever we were saying, all of those who I stood side by side with, we were sort of like that white voice that got muffled out. And what got the attention was all the oranges, right? And we sort of like fell into the background, and our voice just ultimately didn't count in so many ways, on so many occasions. And it's that background of being in that state of, so we're like those dark triangles, right? And we were coming at everything defensively, right? We were always on the defense. And so there was this front that just was like this, pushing like this, trying to get somewhere. And it's really hard to push like this, right? And what is so beautiful and what I'm seeing is that we're finally, as a lahui, getting a critical mass, getting to the point where we're able to invert that. And what I see in this room is this. We are now the point of the spear. Because this really, so I jumped in around the time of H3, and remember testifying, remember creating a House bill and a concurrent Senate bill to try and change historic preservation laws. And what we were looking at was how do we solve the problem of the situation where those who are outside of our culture get to determine what are identified as wahikupuna. They get to say, oh, this is or this isn't. And then they get to say what the boundaries are, right? Oh, got one over here, and one over here, and one over here. I wouldn't call them all separate. And we know how, low that is, right? And by no accident, right, the ones over here, that are all separate, well, the only one that's important is the one that not going to be a part of the development, the one over here. And everything over here, where the development wants to be, agricultural terraces, and Hawaiians don't care about agricultural terraces, so I'm not even going to tell them about that. I'm just going to, see what they think about this one. So they got to decide what sites were identified as sites. Yeah, what are wahikupuna? What are their boundaries? What are their functions? And then what are their significance? And then what they typically have done, right, is decided that, okay, only when I think, meet archaeologists, I believe that this is something significant to these Hawaiians, then I'll consult with them. And so many times we were at the defensive side saying, hey, no, you were supposed to be talking with us about all of this. And no, your report is all wrong. And the cultural assessment that, that's been done awesomely, you gotta be paying attention to that, and it should be integrated within. And I'm looking at some folks who did crazy awesome cultural works, cultural resource inventories, and yet those weren't being integrated. And they're still not being integrated. Like, Mauna Kea is a great example of that. I mean, it's just so frustrating. Okay, so that was the dark kind circles. So the beauty is where we're at now as a lahui. And kind of in retrospect, as I look at what's been most important for us and how we've gotten further and further ahead, is kind of these basic pillars, yeah? So all the while, we're gonna have to keep the defensive going. That's Garen's gotta still be part of the picture. Not gonna let go on that, but increased awareness of what our sites are, just because of our history, right? So many of our wahikupuna have been unknown. This is a really happy picture for my father and I. This is like over 20 years ago, and it was time commemorating. We went back up toward Kumaipo, Punana Ulaheia, where back in the 70s, and Dad had gone up a bunch of times trying to refine Punana Ula that McAllister just had at a question mark, like, maybe God, no God. And so one day when we were up there, we found it. And I remember Dad calling me over, and We found it, and that awareness led to a fence line getting moved so that the cattle would no longer trot upon this heiau. And there are so many examples in this room of the work that you all have done to create this awareness of all of these wahikupuna that have been laying there right in front of us, really, but not in our active awareness. And with that active awareness has now enabled that malama that's been so important in that reconnection. Use. So to all of those of you in this room and many more out there, right, who are actively using sites, oh, man, that's so empowering, right? So we think about pu'ukohola and the fact that the park system will never be able to do anything, would never want to do anything without the consultation of these folks because they have used it, right? They're getting in there, using it, being part of it, making it part of our active lives. And that has made all the difference, right? Think about our friends at Paipai He'ia. Oh, kalamai for the cut-off heads. Kili'iko Tibetis, his head is right up there. But yeah, all the difference in the world. So much more productive than the arguing at hearings, right? Continued ownership. Beautiful story that brings in Kelly's own ohana, the Puhi family. And Papa Lyman, my father, Pinky Thompson, people like this who, well, it starts off with an ohana, yeah, Keawea Puhi that had a whole lot of aina at Kokoiki, Kohala. And a certain David Puhi was adamant in asking his mother not to sell this parcel. Please do not sell this parcel, because the family was selling other parcels to the plantation, which was, of course, eagerly gobbling up so they could, put in more mahiko. But one of these parcels, he knew, housed the birthstones of Kamehameha. And so this is in a separate storyline, right? Dad had been talking to Kupuna. Now, kind of, I have to say, mahalo, Papa, because you have been ahead of the curve in a lot of ways. So this is back in the early 60s, right? Recognizing that, I gotta start talking to these kupuna of Kohala and getting their mo'olelo. So he's talking to people like Hiloke Mo'okini and being able to be entrusted with the knowledge of where these birthstones are. And it was a I think you guys heard about the moemoea that just kept on repeating about how, I got to make sure that these birthstones are okay. And they eventually were, as we all know, protected. And now it's something that, is the mana of that place is something that is part of our lahui. But if not for the fact that the Puhi family, David Puhi, saw fit to continue to malama that site and never let it go, this would have been bulldozed by the plantation. They would have given a rip. And maybe if somebody would have known about those pohaku, maybe they would have gotten stolen off. That was another part of the, what if somebody takes those? That's not theirs to take. It belongs to that aina. So, whatever we can do to kako'o our ohana, who have these kinds of places on in their small konehiki lands or whatever they are, we gotta kako'o them so that they can hang on to those lands. Okay, acquisition. This is something that panelists know well, yeah? Something that OHA has done a great job in. I know, Kawika, your work now, with all kinds of land trusts, and other folks in this room. I see Laura Ka'akua over there. Acquisition, it's crazy how much land has been acquired. This is just the Kulaiwi o Kamehameha ma Kohaloloko. All those colorful parcels have been put in trust. That is going to do more good than all of us testifying before any hearing, before any committee. I should talk too about another one of our panelists. Neil, mahalo for all the acquisition around this parcel, because what David Puhi had saved was a small parcel, right? Kamehameha, under Neil's leadership, was able to acquire the area around that. So there's a huge buffer now, because that's the other problem, right? Even when they do say they're going to save it, it's like, okay, right over here. And then, otherwise it's like, oh, and the parking lot is right, like the burial site is here, and the parking lot is right over there too. Yeah, not so good. Yes, mahalo nui, mahalo. So, acquiring these sites, so awesome. Creation. Historic properties are 50 years old. Gosh, if I built one when I was 4 years old, it would be a historic property today. But the cool thing is, our keiki are doing this. This is a mala at Halau Kumana. This is the kula ha'aha. And this is something that they built during the time that my kids have been there since they were in kula ha'aha. And it wasn't their papa, it was a later one, but it's time for us to create these, small and humble like this, to get our keiki started so they know these sort of skills, not just the uhahumu skills, but what you actually do at these sites, whatever that was the function of these sites. Let's get awesome at it, so that whenever anybody's questioning whether, oh, how do you know it's of that? Oh yeah, because I can tell you that, and you have the expert, mahi'ai, who's going to tell you, this is how come I know this is this kind of thing, and this is probably what was growing in here. And with that sort of expertise, how can they be questioned? But yeah, we're growing them young, yeah? So this is the kula ha'aha already making these beautiful places. But we have to think about these kinds of places too, right? We have to remember, well, why did Pilika'aea and Pa'ao build Mo'okini? How did they build it? And what did this tell everybody when it got built? So short kind story. So Pa'ao and Pilika'aea, they're part of the Ulu lineage. And that's in juxtaposition to the Nana Ulu lineage. Of course, those are brother lineages, but in Hawaii, the Nana Ulu lineage was actually the first to get fully established here, and then the Ulu lineage comes later. But the Ulu guys are actually the senior line. So when the Ulu guys showed up, it was a little bit of a kind of a conflict, because on one hand, the Ulu guys are from the senior line, and that's one way we determine, who has standing. But there's another way we determine who has standing, which is who is here first. And the Nana Ulu guys were here first. But there are some pilikia, right? If you follow the story that Kamakau shares about Pili and that era, the fact that there wasn't really this kind of hierarchy that had developed later kind of created a situation, like if everybody in this room were makai nana and the guys standing were, or no, opposite. Okay, well, the guys over there above us were ali'i, pretend. Then if there were some of those ali'i who treated some of us badly, there really wasn't any recourse. There wasn't like one of them who could say, get in line and take care of your people. Get in line and take care of your aina. There really wasn't that kind of thing. So there wasn't an accountability one to another, and it created some pilikia. And so when Pa'ao sees this and sees that there's a need for this sort of super high chief who can kind of pull everything together and get some greater sense of order and stability and accountability for ali'i to one another, for ali'i to aina, for ali'i to makainana, he felt like, okay, I'm gonna go back to Kahiki and get an ali'i that I think can do that. And so he goes back to Kahiki and gets Pilika'aea. And when they get here, right, imagine, what are they gonna do? Are they gonna just like be able to take over all these aina? Like, how many of them are there, right? How many people would have been coming on those va'a? They did not take over by force, by thousands of them coming on va'a. They were able to establish themselves as the administration of Hawaii because of ideas, right? And those ideas of that kind of accountability that I just mentioned made a lot of people nod their heads and say, yeah, I can support that. So many people that they were able to get all of these people from Pololu all the way to this part of the dry side, right? So you're going from, this is right nearby Kokuiki, a little bit Kuala Loko of Kokuiki. And so it's a very long, 10 miles as an Eva would fly. And if you know the Aina, right, go lettuce, rivers, and any kind. So so when he was doing that, right, they were able to do that. It quickly conveyed something. The fact that these pohaku were from Pololu, the fact that the bottom of, I don't know if you can get a sense of how big this is. If you've seen it, you know what I mean, right? It's like the widest part is like 30 feet wide. 20 feet wide and 30 feet tall. So imagine how big this is, right? If you've seen it, you know immediately. So what did this convey to everybody once they saw it? What did it say to the rest of the Nanaulu guys who might question whether these guys got their act together? What will it say to people when we start building heiau? Whether they are literal heiau, which would make a lot of sense, and we should, or whether there are other kinds of figurative heiau where each of us has a pohaku that we carry and we align ourselves and we coalesce, and everybody has time to hapai that pohaku, and everybody is connected to the next person who carries that pohaku, and we all work together to build something like this. And think about what this said about the back end of this. Who is feeding all of these people? Who is organizing all of these people? Who got all of the supplies and everything needed for this effort? It's humongous, humongous, humongous effort of a people that clearly had their act together, that clearly had awesome leaders, that clearly had a common focus. And what were they building? It wasn't just something like, whoa, but it was something meaningful that would still have meaning for all of us, generations and generations later. So what heiau are we going to build? And how are we going to work together? And if I can talk about this collaboration, I'll be happy to talk with you guys about it later, share a little bit about what we've been doing at Kanaiokana. So there's kind of an analogous group of folks, Hawaiian educators, who have been coming together really similarly to how Kali'okapakai is coming together. Lots going on in this area. Each one of those big circles is a big area of work. All the small little gray ones are activities going on within that. It's actually a project dashboard. If you go to projects.kanaiokana.net, you can see that. It's all clickable, and you can go in and play with it. And the way we were able to get things done is that they're really, I know, kind of counter to the Pilikaea story, it doesn't have a boss. Kanaiokana doesn't have a boss. We love to say we have the best boss ever, and it's Kuleana. And can't see all this, but we go with the goers. So it's like, do you love the lahui? Yes, okay, forward. Do you love Kuleana? Yes. And if not, then you should love love Kuleana, and you should come back again and try again. Do you love Aloha Aina? Do you love working with all kind of great people and taking care of our lahui, growing Aloha Aina leaders? Yes. Okay, then, hikino, let's do this. Go with the goers. And be cool that sometimes not, 20% of us going to be the goers this month, and then a different 30% going to be the goers next month, and that's got to be cool. Who can go at that moment? Have fun, rely on technology. Auntie Hoku is the quickest adopter of any tech. She's like Queen of Slack, okay? So, and technology is super important to make a coalition across the Pai'aina work. And rely on relationships that already exist, which is like abundant in this realm, right? And yeah, so when you get people together, they already know and love each other, and it works. And then really key is that you gotta have a backbone organization, and Kamehameha has generously provided Ka'iwakīloumoku for that for Kana'okana, and it makes a big diff. So we get a lot done, and it's good stuff, and we have a lot of fun doing it. So mahalo.
Let's give a hand to all of our panelists. I'm just gonna wrap us up real quick. I think the value of our panelists was so broad and diverse. It actually deviated a lot from what I thought of how it was gonna go. I think from the community activism, from what Des is doing in Aotearoa, and we've heard glimpses of what Kēhau and Uncle Fred have done. It is an important part that leads to a lot of these policy changes. It leads to systematic thinking of how we change those things. And the most kind of groundbreaking thing was about going with policy, which goes against my policy, but it is actually, we got to think about, I think you need two sides of the coin sometimes. You need the people that are going to go against policy, and you need the people that are going to go with policy. And we need that's what we need to do to come together as a collective, is a diverse perspective. We're not all going to agree on everything. We're going to go in different paths, but we should all kind of have the point of the spear, the tip of the spear, and pointing towards that direction. So with that, in terms of the concept of alternative futures, is really getting us to grow our thinking, getting us to grow and thinking outside the box, thinking of where we want to be, in the next generation, our keiki, and where are they going to be if they're sitting here, decades from now, and so forth, and that's where we want to go. So with that, I just wanted to, we're going to go into breakout session right now, but just let's continue this forward thinking, let's continue how we're going to progress our collective forward. Mahalo.